Hey there, Deluxe fans! Hope you're feeling exceptionally magical today. We are happy to say that, thanks to the director of Encanto, Jared Bush, fans have a bit more insight into the miracle that blessed the Madrigal family in Abuela Alma's youth. This is huge, because not only does this new information help fans understand why the miracle chose to bless the Madrigal family in the first place, but it also works hand in hand with the running theory that our channel has had about the fantastic miracle all along. Today, we are going to be discussing the heart-wrenching secret of the Madrigal family's miracle that the creators of Encanto have revealed to us. Be sure to stick around until the end of the video to find out how this information fits into our theory about the birth of the miracle. Throughout Disney's Encanto, the audience learned the story of how the Madrigal family, specifically Abuela Alma, came to be blessed with the miracle that saved them and their people in their time of need. That being said, the creators of the film and the producers over at Disney never seemed explicitly interested in letting all of us in on the exact details surrounding Alma's miracle. All we really find out are the circumstances surrounding the instance where she and her family were blessed. We, along with Mirabel, were told by Abuela Alma the story about what happened all of those years ago as the two reconciled by the river. Alma told us that she and her husband Pedro had met in their town, and it was love at first sight. The pair would end up being really happy together for what was, sadly, a brief time. Pedro and Alma got married, and Alma informed Pedro that she was pregnant, not with one, but 3 children that would end up being the triplets Julieta, Pepa, and Bruno. Shortly after the birth of their children, however, their town was raided by men on horseback who were only there to cause destruction and chaos. Pedro took Alma, along with the rest of their village and family, into the forests of Colombia, only to be pursued by the marauders. In a last-ditch effort to save his family, Pedro sacrificed himself at the very river that Alma had been telling this story at. As her husband was killed right before her eyes, Alma fell to her knees and cried out in pain, and in the prayer which was seemingly answered by the miracle. The mountains around her and the villagers moved and separated them from any would-be attackers. It was also then that the Madrigal family was gifted with their magical casita and their individual powers or gifts that are granted to each member of the family as they come of age. Each member aside from Mirabel. Now, as far as we knew, there wasn't much insight directly given to us by the film about what caused the miracle to come into existence in the first place, or why it specifically chose Alma and her family instead of one of the other families that were escaping with her from the horror that had begun to plague their town. Well, there is likely a good reason, or a few good reasons, as to why the creators of Encanto would want to keep the miracle so ambiguous, at least at first. The most obvious is to keep fans in the audience wanting more, right? I mean, if you have questions about the movie that you love, and the studio knows you want the answers, they are more likely to work on producing a sequel in some form. The other reason is a bit more centered around the film itself, and how it kept much of the lore surrounding the Madrigal family's magic a mystery. Not only were we not given a direct answer as to why the magic existed, but we also never found out why Mirabel didn't receive powers like the rest of her family. This was so that the audience could focus more on the details surrounding each of the family members and the story, rather than focus on the detail and the rules that surround the magical gift that they had been granted. Encanto managed to make the miracle in the movie feel more as if it were simply a part of everyday life, instead of making it a focal point. That being said, the director of the film, Jared Bush, has gone on to give fans a lot of insight that we might not have learned from the film through his personal Twitter account, and his most recent disclosure is actually really interesting. You see, on February 10th of this year, a fan on Twitter asked the director a question that a lot of us had been curious about. They asked, where did the candle come from? And then continued to state how it felt a bit random and confusing without context. Well, just 2 days later, Bush responded, the candle was Abuela Alma and Pedro's wedding candle. This was something that shocked a lot of fans of the film, with many of them responding by mentioning how touching of a sentiment this was, and it actually gives us quite a bit more insight as to how and why the miracle was connected to the Madrigal family. As we mentioned before, many fans, including us, sort of always felt as if the miracle itself was a bit random. I mean, other than progressing the plot of the movie, they never really gave us a proper reason for the miracle being present. Now, that's the case for a lot of Disney films, when it comes to magic, that is. There's never really an explanation of why it exists or why it chose to center itself around the film's protagonist. They never directly tell us why the fairy godmother was looking after Cinderella, or why Quasimodo had mystical gargoyle friends. They're just an accepted part of the plot, as is the miracle for the Madrigal family in Encanto. While it was necessary for the survival of the family, especially at the time that Alma was blessed with the miracle, it still seemed to be a bit random. I mean, as we said, there were a handful of other families that were also being pursued by the marauders, and all experiencing similar tragedies to Alma and Pedro. So why didn't the miracle bless them? That's something that we couldn't help but wonder while watching the movie, and thanks to Jared Bush, we now know of a deeper connection. The candle didn't appear with the miracle like some fans may have believe, but instead was already in the possession of Alma and Pedro. And in fact, it was an object that, judging by its origin, held significant sentimental value to Abuela Alma and her husband, which could have a bunch of impacts on certain Encanto theories that are already floating around, including some of our own. But we'll get to that in a moment. Before the miracle, the candle was still something special to Pedro and Alma. It was a representation of the love that the couple had for one another, and the love that they had for their family. And when you think about it that way, the candle almost makes the perfect object or vessel to embody the miracle when it came into existence. Now, to make the connection that the miracle had with the Madrigal family even stronger, the candle went through a bit of a change once it came to embody the miracle. It went from being a blank candle that merely held sentimental value to becoming a beautifully lit candle that had a gilded butterfly carved into it. Well, this butterfly image was not only created by the magic, but it was also meant to represent Pedro, as Pedro met Alma after the two had been staring at a butterfly and then locked eyes with one another for the first time. This is a huge detail, especially when you consider that butterflies are typically used to represent or symbolize change. Some might even speculate that the butterfly carving was meant to symbolize Pedro transforming, or changing into the miracle that blessed his family after sacrificing himself in an attempt to save them. Now, we mentioned that this revelation could possibly affect certain fan theories that are centered around the miracle or how it came into existence, including our own. And we just spoke about a perfect example of that. While some fans may have already been speculating that Pedro was involved in the creation of the miracle to some extent, the fact that the butterfly symbol on the candle is meant to represent him almost solidifies that concept. Think about it. If the candle was blank before the miracle and then beautifully engraved afterwards, and the miracle only came to life after Pedro's passing, it isn't a stretch to assume that all three are connected to one another. In fact, this directly impacted a theory that our channel had about the creation of the miracle and what was required at that moment. If you've been following our channel for the past few months, you might know that we have made a few videos about our own theory concerning the Madrigal's miracle and how it was manifested. If you haven't seen those videos and would like to hear more about our theory, be sure to check it out. We will leave a link above for you to click on. But for now, the concept of the theory is that in order to create a miracle, at least in the Encanto universe, one would have to act selflessly and combine that with a prayer that was geared towards positivity or a positive outcome. For instance, the first miracle that blessed the family when they were being pursued by the marauders was created once Pedro sacrificed himself, which acted as a selfless act, which was followed by Abuela Alma falling to her knees and praying for the safety of her family and her people. We believed that this combination was the perfect recipe for a Disney miracle. And though this new information changes our theory a bit, in the end it only makes the recipe a bit spicier. You see, now instead of the combination simply being the act and the prayer, we believe that there also needed to be something of immense sentimental value for the miracle to hold onto and come into existence. And in the case of the first miracle, it was the candle that Alma and Pedro had from their wedding. It represented the love that they had and will always have for each other and the family that they started together. As for the second miracle, which we saw at the end of the film when Mirabel placed the last piece of the house together and the Madrigal's gifts were restored along with their magical casita, that also lines up with our updated theory. If anything, it lines up even better now. You see, when Mirabel and her abuela reconciled with one another and began working to make their family whole again, though they were confident, it's likely that the two were hoping and praying that everything would work out. This could be seen as a prayer for positivity or a positive outcome. Next up, we need the selfless act. Well, I'd say that when Mirabel came back to her family and taught them all that even without their gifts, they are all just as amazing as they had ever been and could still do anything that they put their minds to, could be seen as a selfless act. She showed everyone that it's okay to show signs of weakness, it's okay to relax every now and then, and that it's okay to be true to yourself. Meanwhile, Mirabel didn't have a shoulder to lean on for herself. And last but not least, we would need something of immense sentimental value, and I think that the doorknob is the perfect example of that. Not only was the doorknob the last piece of the house to be fixed, but when Mirabel got to place it on the door, it was as if she had finally gotten the room that she had been denied all of those years ago when she was denied her gift at the ceremony. She so desperately wanted to be powerful like her family and have a space to call her own, and she finally got one when she brought the miracle back and the Madrigals back together. That doorknob probably meant more to her than we could ever imagine, and the fact that she finally got one, and it's on the front door of Casita, showed her that she finally had a place in the family. Much like the Madrigal family's miracle, Disney's Encanto seems to be the gift that keeps on giving. With all of the new information being disclosed by the creators of the film, fans can't help but long more and more for news about a sequel. But for now, all we can do is keep our fingers crossed and continue to take in all the new secrets and information that the director wants to spill for us. What do you hope we learn about Encanto next? Be sure to let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. As for now, that's all Disney fans. Let us know what video you'd like to see next in the comments, and like and subscribe for more magically packed videos.